Well, Mr. Mayor, thank you very much for being with us. And Joe, you don't know how powerful you are. What a power, wow. I've been reading about you for years. That endorsement just means automatic, right? But you've done an amazing job with a business that has just been incredible, the job you've done up here, so congratulations very much. Jim, thank you. And I must tell you, Stephen, I've known you from the Joe Torre days, and Joe would never stop, you know. But first of all, he does a fantastic job for charity, Joe Torre, and Stephen did an amazing job with him. But they'd call up, and I'd give $25,000. They said, that's all we want. As soon as the check got in the mail, they'd call and they said, could we have another 25? So I used to wait till the end, right? So I could give it to you 1 or 2 times as opposed to 4 or 5 times. But you were fantastic. So I will tell you just a quick little story. I was a little bit concerned about this morning because the weather forecast was not great in New York. They're being hit with a massive storm. Now, a lot of times they build that up to get ratings. You know, the storm, they always talk about the storm. The only time it didn't work that way was Hurricane Sandy. That was actually greater than what they said. But usually it's the opposite. So I sort of said, you know, if I don't get up here, I have between Joe and the mayor and Stephen and all the people, I heard you set your record. Is this your record, Stephen? Your all-time record. And that's an honor. But I said, I'm in trouble. So I got up at about 4:30 in the morning, got to the plane really early, and we made sure we were able to take off. I don't know if other planes are taking off, but we got off. And I said, what would be the problem? I was asking in the car today, right? Nice, by the way, nice company you have. I'm looking at all these signs coming through, very impressive. But we were talking in the car, and I said, what would have happened? And they said, well, it's never happened before. I said, well, it wasn't going to happen with me either, believe me. I had a very interesting experience with New Hampshire. I love New Hampshire. I love the people of New Hampshire. I love the way they just work, and they love to work, and they're proud, and they're amazing. But my first, and a lot of people don't know this, they say, how did you get started in politics? Now, I've always been very political because I need zone changes, okay? When you need zone changes, you're political. Like, to build Trump Tower, I needed a zone change. So, you know, I'll support the Democrats, the Republicans, whoever the hell I have to support. I need that zone change. And I've always been very much. But they said, how did this aspect of your political life start? And it started because of New Hampshire. I was asked to make a speech by a very good friend of mine from New Hampshire. And it was years ago, like 88 or 89. And I very innocently came up, and it was a speech on success. It was a motivational speech for a fairly large group of people. And I came up, I made the speech, that was it. And all of a sudden, because it was New Hampshire, I heard for the first time that I was running for president, okay? So that's how we started, and you know, since then I've really had a lot of fun. I've backed a lot of people. I felt very strongly about Mitt Romney. I thought he'd be really, you know, good, and things were going really well for him. And then the last month or so, it wasn't too pretty what happened. I don't know what happened. Someday he's going to explain it. Someday I've read books, and nobody quite understands it. But he was a good man. I think he actually would have been a very good president. But the last month of the campaign, he had that first debate, and it was looking great. And after that, either through advice, or maybe you get a little nervous, or maybe you do a little choking, which happens, but something happened that was not good. I remember seeing a commercial and a shot where he was walking out of a Walmart store, and he was dressed in a cowboy hat and cowboys. And I said, that's not him. And he couldn't get the cart through the door because he never did it before. And you say, you gotta be yourself. And when he was himself, he was terrific. But that was a race that, you know, should have been won. It was a race that could have very easily been won. It's a race that if it was held like 2 months later would have been won. But a lot of things happened right after the election. They found out about employment numbers weren't quite exactly right. They made their adjustment after, and I actually said that. I said, you know, those numbers are wrong. Remember the positive report they had just before, a couple of days before the election? And everybody wrote about it. I'm sure even Joe wrote about it, right? Those great numbers. And then you had to do a correction, but unfortunately the correction was 30 days later. And it was a big correction. So a lot of things happened. And with dealing with very smart people, very, very cunning people. You know, when I was younger, I didn't have a lot of respect for politicians. And I just didn't. I didn't think they were hardworking. I didn't think they were good. I didn't know how smart they were. But years later, and through going through years, they really are smart. They're survivors. And I remember I had a very important politician. I won't use his name because he's actually a nice guy, but he wouldn't do something that he should have done. And I kept going to him, and I was a supporter and a friend of his. And all he'd do is, Don, I'm thinking about it. He's been thinking about it for years, right? I'm thinking about it. Wouldn't do it. And he ultimately retired. He was in Congress, I think, for 26 years, a long period of time. And I was angry at him. Then all of a sudden, a few years later, I hadn't spoken to him, I realized that what he ultimately was a survivor. Unfortunately, he was a survivor for himself. He wasn't a survivor for the country, and it wasn't good for the country. He was a survivor for himself. He stayed in office, and he stayed there long, and he stayed there hard, and he was sort of unbeatable. But it wasn't a good thing for the country. Now, about 9 weeks ago, it looked like the Republican Party was in tremendous shambles and a real problem. And they were blaming it for everything. And you know, there are two sides to a tango, but they were blaming it for everybody and for everything, and it looked like it was really in serious trouble. And then Obamacare website raised its head, and all of a sudden, I see things that are unbelievable. I will say that I believe, now subject to lots of changes, I mean, we just went through one big change where it was the Republicans that were going to get decimated in November. And now, in my opinion, because of Obamacare, which is really turning out to be a disaster, the Democrats have a chance of getting decimated in November. Yesterday, they came out with a report that the people that are signing up for the plan already had health insurance, most of them. This was not what it was supposed to be. And the problem is that they had health insurance that was not really good. The new stuff, the new is horrible, much more expensive, not nearly as good. The plan is not nearly as good as what it was supposed to be. And they gave up these fantastic plans for less money, and they're signing up to plans where it's not good, not appropriate, not good for companies. Many, many companies are just having a tremendous problem. They're going out of business. You're going to see that. And it's really something that nobody thought it could have been so bad. I mean, the website is the least of it. The website was sort of like a red flag about how bad. Now, if you think about it, if your whole legacy is based on Obamacare, your whole legacy is based on this concept of health insurance, and you hire a company that had a terrible track record, that's being sued all over the place, that failed so many times, and we have Google, and we have Microsoft, and we have all of these, you could just name them from now till kingdom come. We have these great American companies. This is a company from Canada. Not that I have anything against Canada, because I don't. But they hired a company from Canada who has a bad track record, as opposed to one of the great, great American companies that, in my opinion, if you went to the head of Google and said, fellas, do your country a service. Do it for nothing. Create a website that's going to be the greatest ever created, and don't charge us. Make a contribution to the United States of America. In my opinion, they would have done it for nothing, and it would have been an amazing plan. Whether you like the insurance or not, the plan itself, the website would have been amazing, without question. I mean, they do things that are 10 times. If I want to see an address of a person living in San Diego, they have boom, 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 and then I can see the address on the door, and if I want to see whether or not the door needs a paint job, I can go a little bit closer, Joe. Is that right? I mean, it's incredible. So what they do by comparison is, you know, much tougher, much more complicated, technologically not even a contest. So it was sort of an indication. Now, you'd think that a person that had his whole legacy based on this would have at least made sure. I mean, I can tell you, I would have been calling whoever it was that I hired. I would have actually gone to probably Google. And I always said, do it for nothing. Let's have a news conference and announce that you are making this tremendous contribution. Now, nobody thought about $1.6 billion for a website, you know, in contribution. I thought maybe like, I've done so many websites. I do them for nothing. I hire smart people, they do a website. What did it cost? I don't know. How much am I paying the guy or the woman? So I don't know. We're up to $1.6 billion for the creation of a website, and the company last week was fired, and they brought a new company in. Now, my next question is, are we going to sue the company that did this horrible job? So regardless, it's a huge problem. It's just beginning, and it's getting now, in my opinion, a lot worse. And I think the Republicans are going to have an election that is going to shock people. There have been a couple of elections where the Republican, I won't mention names because they happen to be friends of mine, actually on both sides of the election, but there was one election in particular where a certain party did not use Obamacare and was just getting trounced. In the last week, he went heavy on Obamacare, and he almost pulled it out. I mean, he was down by so many points, it was ridiculous, and he just laid Obamacare out on the table. And had he done it a week before, he probably would have won the election. So I think it's going to be a tremendous factor in November and leading up to November. And I really believe that it's going to have a devastating effect on the Democrats. The Democrats, many of whom are my friends, the Democrats are running away from it, even in New York and in places that you don't think. They're just running away from it. They are petrified of what's happened with Obamacare. They're angry about the launch. They're really angry about the website. And they are absolutely concerned about the upcoming election. So I think, you know, as a little bit of a prediction, which you're starting to hear a little bit more and more, but I think that Obamacare is going to really turn the tides in terms of Republican Democrats. So I know you have some Democrats in the room too, so they can feel one way about it. It doesn't make any difference. I just think it's going to be a very negative thing for the Democrats. Now, what our country needs more than anything is a strong economy. Numbers were released last week, which were abysmal. They were a disaster. And to show you how dishonest and corrupt our system of reporting is, our unemployment rate actually went down. So it went from 7% to 6.7%. And yet there's not a person in the country, including any Democrat, that spoke well of the real numbers behind it. And the reason it went down, and it's so unfair, and it should be changed, is that everybody stopped looking for jobs. They've just given up. So that's almost like being employed for purposes of reporting. And the numbers went down, and yet the actual numbers were so bad, it was incredible, incredible. People were thinking 200,000 jobs were going to be created, 300,000 jobs were going to be created, and that would have been good, it would have been solid, not great, but very solid. And they turned out to be 74,000 jobs created, and not one person, even at the White House, defended the report. It was really very catastrophic. And I think when you couple that with some of the things I've said about Obamacare and other elements of what's going on in the country, I think that you're going to see some really, really bad things happening in the next couple of months because it just looks like it's heading wrong. But what is unfair is to people that don't understand economics, don't understand, they actually say, well, you know, we're down to 6.7. And every month we go down, and every month the numbers get worse and worse. I've met, when I was up a couple of years ago, I was up and not campaigning because I wasn't going to run. I decided I wasn't going. I'd back Mitt Romney. I was doing many, many jobs. Even now I'm doing Doral in Miami, 800 acres right in the middle of Miami. I'm doing the old post office site right next to the White House, which is a little bit ironic. We're converting this great building, one of the most beautiful buildings in the country, one of the most beautiful buildings in Washington, It was a little surprising that I got it. There were 18 bidders, but our plan was fantastic, sold by the federal government. And we're going to do a fantastic job. I mean, I'm doing things, and The Apprentice is shooting. In another 3-4 weeks, we're doing another season. One thing you know about television, it's very, very cold, and in one way, very, very beautiful. Excuse the language, but there's no bullshit. If you get good ratings, you're on. If you get bad ratings, you're off. There's no doubt about it. And there's something nice about that, clinical. You know, in the world of politics, you don't know what you're getting. With that, it's very simple. And we're now in our 14th season. It's actually 10 years, but some seasons we did 4. And one season we did 2. So we're 14 seasons, and we're 10 years. And it's really been amazing. I remember when it was first announced that I was doing The Apprentice, a certain television critic, pretty big television critic, said, "You must be kidding. In order to have success, by the way, in a show with ratings, you need women. If women don't watch, because 60% of your audience, if women don't watch, a show cannot be successful." So this critic wrote a very nasty piece about me. The show hadn't gone on. What a waste of time and energy doing The Apprentice, because women will never want to watch Donald Trump. And I said, why, am I so bad? You know, I mean, it may not look good, but it is my real hair. I read this great story about me. I read this great story about me about a week ago. How well I'm doing, what a genius at real estate, what a this, what a that. And I can't show anybody this story, because in one sentence he said, but he has the worst wig I've ever seen. Do you believe this? So, Joe, I can't even send that story around because I'm embarrassed by the statement. What am I going to do? But, so you never really know what's going to happen. The show it came on. It went from number 10 the first week. It then went to 8. It then went to 7. It then went to 5. Then it went to 3. And then it became the number 1 show on television. Number 1. I said, I don't believe it. I'm a movie star. My father would not have believed this, believe it. He would not have understood that. That was not in his plan. And so all of a sudden, and I knew it was good because it was early in the morning, 7 o'clock in the morning, and I got a call from the head of NBC, chairman of NBC. Donald, good morning. I'd just like to wish you, I understand today's your birthday, and I'd like to wish you a happy birthday. I said, thank you very much. Then I got another call from the president of NBC. Donald, congratulations, it's your birthday. We wish you many, many more happy birthday. I said, thank you very much. My wife was sleeping. She rolled over. Who was it? I said, that was the chairman of NBC. We must have a hit on our hands because I never spoke to him before. You know. So it was an amazing thing. But it sort of tells you that you never know what's going to happen. You've got to take chances. And with The Apprentice was interesting because I had an agent who was a fantastic agent, like the biggest agent in Hollywood, one of them. And when I shook hands with Mark Burnett was using the Woolman skating rink in Central Park, which I control and I rebuilt years ago. And the city was, for years, they were working on this Woolman skating rink. There were 8 years, $22 million, and it was a disaster. Everyone knows it's now in the Wharton School, it's in Harvard School. What happened? And I went to Ed Koch. I said, let me take it over. I'll get it built. I built it in 3 months. For a period, they were for $22 million. I did it for $1.8 million. And of the $1.8, $800,000 was ripping down everything they did. It was a disaster. So you never know. And Mark Burnett was using it for Survivor. Mark Burnett was the producer of Survivor and also came to me with The Apprentice. And he had the idea. I said, well, that sounds good. So I went to my agent, but I shook hands with Mark Burnett. And I'm a big person that when you make a deal with somebody, when you shake hands, I think it's one of the things that made me successful. People trust me. And I made a deal, and I told my agent, by the way, I made a deal. He goes, Donald, I won't let you make that deal. You're going to be embarrassed. It's going to be a disaster. There's never been a business show in the history of television that made it in prime time. And basically, this is sort of a business show. I said, but I love the idea. I'm teaching people. They can learn from my experience, both good and bad experience. I think it's great. Donald, I won't let you do it. I'm your agent. You're making a mistake. Don't do it. I said, I have a problem. I have to do it. I shook hands with Mark Burnett, and I shook hands with NBC. So anyway, so the show goes on, it becomes this big hit and becomes the #1 show. Everyone's going crazy. I'm on the cover of TV Guide. Can you believe this? TV Guide. Never thought I was going to make TV Guide, like 4 times already. And I get a call from my agent after it goes to #1. Calls me, goes, Donald, congratulations. I said, on what? He said, the show just hit #1. I said, yeah, but, okay, thank you. I wasn't thrilled with him, by the way. Thank you. He said, Donald, could we meet? I said, why? He said, I think I'm entitled to a commission. Believe this? So let's say his name is Jim. I said, Jim, you didn't want me to do the show. He said, well, but I didn't stop you, and I do think I said, what kind of money would you want? He said, would $4 million be appropriate? I said, Jim, you're fired. I fired him. That was the last time I've ever spoken to this guy. Ay, ay, ay. And speaking of Jim, you have a great guy here, Jim Tietzel, from Wilcox Industry. Now, when I was up 2 years ago, he gave me a tour of his plant. He and his wife, they're like incredible people. When you see that plant, and others that I've also seen up here, it's amazing what we can do if we want. So I've been talking for so long about China. And when I say China, I'm not only meaning China, I'm meaning China and lots of other places. By the way, a new culprit is Mexico. Now, tomorrow I'll be in trouble because I'm doing a job in Mexico, so I'll get a call from the president of Mexico. Every time I hit a country, because I'm doing jobs all over the world, I always get a call from the prime minister or the head of the country, sometimes a dictator. What are you talking about? I said, oh, no, I was only kidding. I was only kidding. Okay. But every time but Mexico, believe it or not, is eating our lunch. You'll be reading about it a lot over the next couple of years. So many different countries. But I used China as an example. Now, they came out with a report yesterday that they increased by 7.7%. They went up. 7.7. We haven't done that in years, just years. I mean, if we go up 2%, if we go up 1%, we're like, oh, wow, we're doing great. And they're extremely angry because that's all they did, 7.7%. We have got to stop this onslaught of taking our jobs because they're making it impossible. There's never been in history a greater manipulator of currency. There's never been. And they do it brilliantly. And by the way, I don't know, in one of my buildings, I have the biggest Chinese banks. I have the most incredible airline companies from Qatar and other places. I have all of these companies that while I criticize, I respect them. I mean, I tell the people from China, they call me and they say, but you're hitting on us. I said, I'm not hitting on you. I'm saying your people are better than our people. They're doing a much better job than our people. That's not criticizing you. It's actually, if you think about it in a perverse way, it's respect for the job that your country, and probably your companies, because somebody's getting people to do what they're doing, but they're doing an incredible job. They are taking our jobs away, and we're just not making. That's why when I met with Jim 2 years ago, and others, I was so impressed to see that we could do it. We can do things. What he's got there is as good as I've ever seen. Making weapons, making guns. I'm a very big Second Amendment person, by the way, so, it's one of those things. But so when I see that, I was just totally fascinated. But we can do that. We don't have the incentive to do it. We no longer seem to have the incentive to be great as a country. And it's very sad. So we spend in Iraq $2 trillion. And that's the least of it because we lost lives of great people. And you have people walking around today that wish they were never there, that are in serious, serious trouble. We're spending, probably by the time it finishes, a like amount in Afghanistan, and we have a man named Karzai, where they made the agreement. Whether you like the agreement or not, it's probably no good because we don't have good negotiators in office. We have people that have no clue about negotiation. So I assume it's a bad agreement. Somebody said, do you think it's good or bad? I said, who negotiated it? Our representatives. It's bad. Okay. That's so it used to be great. We used to be the smart ones on the block. Now we're the dummies. But we have an agreement signed, sealed, ready to go 2 months ago. All it needs is Karzai's approval. Now, he's only there because of us. And he said, I'm not approving it. I want more. I want much more. And what about the bags of cash? I just want to know, who are the people that delivers the cash? Joe, did you ever check that with your newspaper? Could you send your best investigator? Guys were taking $50 million in cash. I mean, like in green cash, and bringing it to people. I want to know, who are the messengers? Do you think they maybe dipped into the till? Just maybe? You know, can you imagine some soldier, with a satchel over his back, delivering this kind of money? It's so out of control. It's so scary. And, all this money's going, and now, if you look at Iraq, and I've never been a fan of what's going on in Iraq. I'm a very conservative person. I'm a very strong military person. I believe in it so strongly. But, whether you like Saddam Hussein or not, he used to kill terrorists. I mean, terrorists did not have fun in that country. Now, that's the Harvard of terrorism. When you want to become a terrorist, you go to Iraq. That's what. It's like a catastrophe, and all of that money. But if you look over the last month, Iraq is blowing up around them. It's a disaster. And we have, based on a very recent report, one of the worst infrastructures of the world. Now, I didn't know this. They mention countries that I always thought of like third world disasters, and they have better infrastructures. And you see it less up in New Hampshire than I see it in New York, and that other people see it. I mean, I come into LaGuardia Airport, which I almost wasn't able to leave today, and I probably won't be able to get back. In fact, I may have to stay up here for a couple of days. Can somebody house me? Because I may have to stay. It's going to be interesting. But I go into LaGuardia and Kennedy and Newark, and it's like a third world deal. I go to Qatar. I'll never forget, I went to Qatar, and I was dealing with the head of the airlines, Qatar Airlines, very nice guy. And I was walking through this gorgeous terminal, and he was showing me the terminal. And I said, this is so beautiful. I'll never forget, they had a spa for passengers. I said, this is the most beautiful terminal I've ever seen. Congratulations. He goes, no, 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 no. This gets ripped down. There's our terminal. I looked over the horizon. There were like 70 cranes building the most incredible building. This was a temporary terminal, and they're building this thing. I've never seen anything like it. And here we are going in New York City into LaGuardia Airport, and you know that better than anybody, Steve, because you've suffered through it, where you walk through, the terrazzo floors are falling apart, and they have holes in them, and they'll patch them with asphalt inside. You don't use asphalt inside. Asphalt's okay for a road. It's not good for the lobby of a building. It is so bad, and it's embarrassing. And there's no reason. They all sort of started with us. I mean, we started the concept of greatness, but they've taken it on, and we've gone in the wrong direction. So it's very, very sad when you see it, but with all of that, we are a country with tremendous potential. We have tremendous people. We have tremendous energy. We're being stifled right now, but it's going to come back. It's going to come back strong. One thing that's happened in the last, I'd say 4 or 5 years due to technology is we can become the energy capital of the world. Nobody thought that was possible. We're fighting all these wars. We need energy and all of this. I took so much heat when I used to say, okay, we're going to Iraq where they hate us, but we're going to take their oil. Because, some people say, what are we doing in Iraq? Why are we there? They have the second largest oil reserves in the world. So I made the statement that, look, we spend $2 trillion. We ought to get the money back from their oil. I was just killed. I mean, people said, oh, that's such a horrible thought. We spent what do we get? We get nothing, and now it's gone. And by the way, Iran is taking over Iraq, just so we understand it. Iran is running Iraq, and they're taking over Iraq. So, it's really... But because of what's happened with technology today, we don't need these countries that we used to think we needed. We have tremendous, now we do have problems where from an environment, and people don't believe this, I've gotten so many environmental awards, and I could list them all over the walls, and I've been very much for the environment. There are those people that are very sophisticated that call me a great environmentalist, and yet most people don't think, they think just the opposite. But I've received I built golf courses that have gotten tremendous raves on what I've done. Many, many successful golf courses, Washington, D.C., and Westchester, New York, and Los Angeles, California. In Washington, I have one right near the Capitol. It's 3 miles right on the Potomac River. It's on the Potomac. It's incredible for the golfers out there. But I have I've gotten great accolades, and I'm proud of that. I really am proud of it. But a lot of times, the environmental gets in the way of jobs, gets in the way of lots of other things that are very positive things, and actually can be good environmentally. And you have a lot of people making a lot of money off of the environment and off of stopping jobs, whether it's consultants or lawyers or this or that, and things that don't make any sense, things that should be very popular are not able to be done, not able to be built. The jobs are no good. You pay too much for your energy, and it's incredible. But it's going to turn around, and we're going to make this country great again. It's going to happen. We need common sense. We need brain power, and it will happen. And I really believe that what we're going through now can ultimately be a positive, because it's going to turn around just the opposite. And we're going to be back on top. We're not on top right now. We're a laughing stock in many quarters. But this country will be back on top again. With that, I said that I'd take some questions, if you'd like. And Jim, I think you're going to be heading it up or something. But if you want to do some questions, I'd love to, whatever you want to ask. But make them really salacious. Make them, like, interesting. Okay? We can't have this big crowd and have boring questions, you know. Where were you born, Mr. Trump? Oh, I was born in Queens, New York. Oh. Okay. Yes, ma'am. Wow. He's got to start off well. Well, he's a friend of mine, okay? He's a good friend of mine. He's a good guy. But, you know, he's one email away from a disaster. I mean, you know, I just don't know what's going to happen. If you look at how this ever happened in the first place, because it was bad for him. Assuming a big traffic jam, if the mayor has a traffic jam in his city, that's not good for him. But it's not good for the governor. It's not good for anybody that's in politics. And this was a jam that was, you know, people were stuck on the road for like 5 hours to try and get from New York to New Jersey. So you say, how's that good for the governor of the state? It's not good. So it didn't make sense. And he said strongly he didn't know anything about it. Now, the thing is, he's fired 4 or 5 people. And I don't know what they're going to say. I don't know what emails they're going to produce. So it's a very scary situation for Chris. And we'll see how he handles it. Now this other one just comes out. She emailed all sorts of good things about him, and then all of a sudden yesterday came out saying very bad things. So we'll see how that turns out too. But they're all coming out of the woodwork. So it's really a question that won't be able to be answered probably for a year. It's going to go on for a long time. There are many, many investigations going on. And it's a tough situation for him. There's no question about it.
Other questions? Maybe I just follow up on her question. We are 2 years out. Who are some of the candidates you'd like to see, other than yourself, running in 16?
Well, I know them all. I mean, I know just about all. They all came up to my office asking for support. And, you know, it was very funny. When Herman Cain came up, he was a nice guy. He came up, and Mitt Romney came up. They all came up. But Herman came up, and he was the most honest of all, because we had a great conversation for 45 minutes. And then he left. There was a lot of press waiting outside of Trump Tower. And they said, so what did you think? He said, look, I don't really want his endorsement, because he's not going to endorse me anyway. I just wanted him to like me, because he's so vicious in the things he says about people. And I said, you know, he's street smart. That was a very smart thing, and I like him. He's a nice guy. I couldn't say anything bad. They asked me questions. Had I not met him, I probably would have, you know, maybe gone after him. But it's very early. I have a feeling it's going to be somebody who nobody has even been thinking about. The Paul Ryan one was interesting, because I really like him a lot. But he was so into entitlements that when he was chosen, you know, the famous wheelchair ad, I was waiting for that to happen. It was just a choice that was very, very tough in terms of getting elected, because I happen to like the Tea Party. I have great relationships with the Tea Party. To me, the Tea Party is a group of people that work hard and want to see what's good for the country. And I know they're taking a lot of heat lately, but they are good people. And what happened is 78 to 82% of the people in the Tea Party did not want their entitlements touched. So whether you touch them or don't touch them, to get the star of doing that, I thought was going to be very negative. And certainly the Democrats played that card very strongly. It'll be very interesting. I would have thought that Chris Christie was doing well. I think now it's going to be a lot tougher, certainly. At a minimum, it's going to be tougher for him because of what happened. But we'll see what happens, Jim.
You say an unknown person, you think?
I think it could be. I mean, you see it all the time. Hey, nobody ever heard of Barack Obama. He came out of nobody. I mean, Hillary, in all fairness to Hillary, who I know very well, and who's a very nice woman, and the husband's a friend of mine. Actually, her husband was interviewed by Piers Morgan, who, by the way, won The Apprentice, then got the job. So many of these people, they owe me so much. Oh. But being interviewed by Piers Morgan and said, I like Donald Trump, he's a friend, and he's a very good golfer. And I loved it when he said I was a good golfer. That was good. So you don't know. I mean, Barack Obama, nobody had any idea who he was. He came out of nowhere. And, you know, whether you like him, don't like him, whether you like his policies or don't, you have to give him a hell of a lot of credit because he ran an amazing campaign. Hillary had it made. There was nobody going to beat her. And now they have that again. It's very interesting. And it'll be very interesting on the Democratic side. You're not sort of asking me that question, but it'll be very interesting to see what happens because she's going to have to want to do it. That is a grueling task. That is a grueling, grueling task. So, you know, 7 years ago, it was Hillary all the way. Now it's Hillary all the way. You just don't know what's going to happen.
Other questions for Donald? Yes, ma'am.
Men and women. You spoke a little bit of some of the challenges in our economy. What advice do you have to offer them on how to get started in this world?
Okay, well, that's a great question. I see a lot of young faces, too. And the answer is pretty simple. You've got to do what you love. And I say it all the time. And it sounds so basic, but it's never going to change. In a million years from now, it's not going to change. A million years back, you've got to love what you do. You've got to come up with the right concept. Like people say to me, friends of mine that are successful, they say, could you talk to my son or daughter about success, what they should do? They're graduating from college, they're going into college. So, you know, I'll sit with them. Not that I like doing this because it takes a lot of time, but they're friends of mine. They have these great kids. And the first thing I say is you got to love it, but you also ideally want to go into a business that's good. Like, I have a friend who graduated from the Wharton School of Finance with me. I went to the Wharton School. And he was extraordinary, really smart. And I have another friend that also graduated from Wharton, so he was obviously smart, but he was not nearly the same caliber of intelligence. The really smart one went to the airline business. He graduated from Wharton, and Stephen, unlike you, you went to Joe Torre. You were much better off. This guy went to the airline business. And the one that wasn't as good went into one of the major oil companies, and he became like the top guy, one of the top guys. The one in the oil business, not even a contest, he made a tremendous amount of money. The one in the airline business just got crushed. All his life he's been trying to get these things to survive. You know, it's a tough business. Retailing's tough. But I always say, go into a great business if you can. But above that is you have to love it. And if you love it, you'll work harder because it's not like work. Like when I go away, I'm like a basket case. They ask me, oh, please, let's go away to some island where you don't have telephones. I tried it. I was going to be there for a week. I was there for about 3 hours. I said, I'm out of here. I was going crazy. I told my wife, darling, I love you. Let's get the hell out of here. So you have to love what you do because if you do, it solves a lot of problems. With that, try going into an industry that's a great industry. Energy's good, real estate's good. You know, there are certain industries that are just easier. It's easier. And if you can like them, but if you can't like them, don't do it. Most important, do what you love, do what's good. And just one other tip, never quit, never give up. Don't give up. Because, you know, success is right around the corner. And I have so many people that I know that are so smart, and they quit. They gave up. They didn't have the whatever it was. And I know other people that aren't as good, but they had one thing. They never quit. They were like glue. You couldn't get rid of them. And those people are successful. So I would say never, ever quit. Set your sights on something and go for it. Don't stop.
Other questions? All the way in the back. Eddie Roach.
Hello, Eddie. It looks like my kind of guy, this guy.
Is Benghazi just going to get swept away with no one taking any responsibility for? It's disgraceful.
Well, it is disgraceful, Eddie, and it doesn't seem to have legs. I mean, we hear about it on Fox, but we don't hear about it on any place else. And it's amazing how it just, you know, you lost an ambassador, and this ambassador was somebody that was riding the streets with these people a couple of weeks before with the guns up in the air, and, you know, they conquered. Well, those people turned on him very quickly. But, you know, not only that, they turned on him very viciously. They say that what they did to him was horrific. This wasn't just being killed. This was more than being killed. This was dying the worst death. And the young men and the people that died with him were treated unbelievably, you know, it was a horror. And I think it's probably better that they didn't write what happened, but I've heard stories that are just horrendous. It's something that obviously could have been stopped. The report that just came out was very, very bad. It just doesn't seem to catch on with people. And that's why you're asking the question. Because no matter how many reports, look, the report was a one-day wonder. It came out, and it just doesn't seem to be catching on no matter what you do. And I think that's probably 90% of your question. It doesn't seem to resonate. And I don't know, even if Hillary runs and, you know, gets the nomination and runs, I just don't know if Benghazi is going to be the big issue. It should be certainly an issue, and it should be a big issue, but it doesn't catch on, it doesn't resonate, and there's nothing that anybody seems to do. And I'm talking about with the people. It's not catching on. So I don't think it's going to be the kind of factor that it should be. And you feel that also, I think. And you're not happy about it, and I understand that.
One or two more questions? Yes, sir.
Mr. Trump, as a business person who keeps people accountable, what are your thoughts on, you know, Benghazi and all these other various things that have been happening with this administration in which there is no accountability? What are your thoughts on that lack of accountability currently?
Well, it is amazing because, you know, you have all the different scandals. I won't even name them because you talk about them every day, but you have so many. One thing, not the NSA, and I don't even look at the NSA because maybe that was happening before Obama, but so many different things are happening. So many bad events. You know, Syria, we were treated like babies. I mean, what Putin did to us with Syria was like he just cast us aside like we were nothing. And we looked like stupid people, and frankly, perhaps that's so. But, and I'm not saying go into Syria, but I am saying the way we were treated was really incredible. And he essentially, in one little negotiation, took over Syria. Now, I don't know if you want it, but if you want it, he's got it. And there's so many things, and they don't seem, you know, they call some people Teflon, and I've heard the expression for years, Teflon. There has never been a person who's got a more beautiful coating of Teflon than our president, because nothing seems to stick. No matter what happens, no matter what's said, no matter what's done, no matter how bad things are, it's like a one-day story, and if it's really bad, it's a two-day story. And you look at a Chris Christie. I mean, I turned on the news last night. The whole thing is about Chris Christie. It's like unbelievable. And that's not to justify what took place over there, because it was terrible and foolish and everything else. But it's just a story that's not quitting. It's getting bigger and bigger and bigger, as per your question. And it's amazing how nothing sticks. Now, that could be a great talent that he's got. That could be the press protecting him, which I think that's, you know, probably both. But no matter how bad the situation, no matter how bad, I mean, the one thing that seems to be sticking, and even that's a little bit fading into the woodwork, but I think the numbers just won't let it, because I've been saying that Obamacare is going to die of its own weight. It's just, people are not going to accept it. They're not going to accept a plan that they loved, a doctor that they loved, a total lie where you can keep your plan and you can keep your doctor, which was a total lie and had to be a lie and was said 39 times. And
It was a lie. I do think that Obamacare will stick because it affects people every single day. And they're not being treated well, they're not being treated like they were, and they're paying a lot more money for the bad treatment. And again, the people that didn't have a plan, those are the people that this was supposed to protect, and they're not signing up. So the people that are signing up are people that were happy with their plan, and now they're paying a lot more money for a bad plan. So I think that's going to stick, but so far, virtually nothing has stuck.
Maybe one, yes, ma'am.
Hi.
Thank you. I'm curious to know what you think the answer is going to be for the Republican Party in terms of unifying the Tea Party's vision for the future and the quote-unquote mainstream Republican Party's vision for the future, because the potential success you alluded to earlier in the day, I think it's going to elude the Republican Party potentially if we have another debt ceiling crisis or another cleavage like we saw then.
Well, it's a great question, and it's a very important question for the Republican Party and the Tea Party. As I told you, I'm a very conservative person, and I think properly conservative, but I like to say conservative with a very good heart, because you have to take care of people. But I love the Tea Party, and I love many of the things that the Tea Party represents. I also tell some of the, and whenever I make a speech to the Tea Party, the place is crazy, just like this. I mean, it's crazy. People show up. They love me. I love them. So I have a great respect for the Tea Party. They have to be careful, however, because we could have 2 or 3 or 4 more senators right now had the Tea Party been a little bit more lenient, a little bit more understanding, and, you know, you might not have that situation that we have right now where they're able to dictate a lot of bad policy because they have the Senate. So, you know, there's some races that really could have been won. In fact, would have been won easily. There were no-brainers, and then that person that was going to run lost in a primary to somebody that, good person and good people, but they could not have won the election, and they didn't come close to winning it. So they took an election that was a no-brainer, and they took it into the loss column. So I think that there's a little bit of a softening, and I think there's maybe a little bit of a hardening on the other side, and I think things are going to work out. People want to see the right people getting into office. And I really believe that we've learned a lot, you know, that we've all learned a lot over the last 3 or 4 years. And the good thing about bad times is you learn from bad times. You have to learn, otherwise you're just not smart. You have to learn when mistakes are made. And I think we've learned a lot from the bad times. I think the Tea Party is going to be more understanding of winning and winning those races. And I see it happening already. I know of one instance where it's like happening. They convince somebody not to run, do not run, and they're going to end up with a nice victory. They wouldn't have done that 4 years ago. So it's going to come about.
Maybe just one final question. Does anyone have it? Yes, sir. In the back.
Broncos or Seahawks?
Well, you know, I love Tom Brady, first of all. He's a friend of mine. And I love Bob Kraft. I don't know if you guys like him. Do we like Bob Kraft today? I always say, Bob, you're George Steinbrenner without all the drama, okay? Because George was a friend. I have all these people with their friends. But he's a great guy, and he's done a great job. And I love Coach Belichick. And, you know, I'll tell you a quick story about it. I'm a golfer. I play golf. Tom Brady, if he played golf, would be like a championship golfer. He's long. His swing, he looks like Ernie Els when he swings the club. He's a phenomenal athlete, and he's got everything going, but if he has to play a little bit more. And I always say he's about a 4 handicap without playing. I mean, how would you like to be a 4 and hardly play? That's, some people are born lucky, right? He's a 4 without playing. If he played like for about 2 weeks with a good coach, he'd be a +3. That means 3 better than scratch. But he's a great guy, and they had a rough game. But I have to say, if it can't be Tom, I also know Peyton Manning, and he's truly a great quarterback. And of all the people that played, although that was a very big play made at the end, whether we liked his speech or not after the play, but you have to hand it to him. He came home with the goods. You know, when you come home with the goods, Muhammad Ali used to say, I'm the greatest, I'm the greatest, I'm the greatest, and it was okay because he'd win. I saw a young boxer, beautiful looking guy, and he was doing the Muhammad Ali, I'm the greatest, and I said, that guy's great, look at him. But he went into the ring, he got knocked out in the first round. That way it doesn't work. You know, it's funny about winning. Somebody said, what's a leader? I said, so usually the easiest thing about a leader is if you win, you know, you're going to be a leader. I'd like to see Peyton Manning do it because he's truly, look, he had the greatest season in the history of quarterbacks. I mean, nobody had a season. Threw for the most touchdowns, most yards, most everything. And he really deserves more than one Super Bowl, in a sense. You know, he's truly a great quarterback, and he's a great guy. So I think I'd like to see Peyton Manning get an extra Super Bowl. I think he just deserves it. He's really deserving of another one. That makes sense. Other than that, I couldn't care less because I wanted Tom to win along with Bob Kraft and Belichick. Anyway, thank you very much. This has been such an honor to be here, and I appreciate it. I'll come back, and you're special people. You really are. It's a special state. You're very important for a lot of reasons, but they're just special, special people. I know many people from New Hampshire, and they're great. So it was an honor when I was asked. I agreed very quickly. Is that right? I was afraid. Well, at least he didn't ask me for money this time, so I was happy about it. This was the best time I ever spoke. But I just want to, and again, Joe, thank you. Mr. Mayor, thank you very much for being here. And this was a lot of fun. Thank you all very much. Appreciate it.